Hi, BookTube, and welcome to another fiction review. Now and again, I like to speculate, and I was wondering recently, what would happen if I had the right kind of literary reputation? Goes without saying, I do not, but say that I did. And what if I was invited to become one of the Booker Prize judging panel? Could I accept? More importantly, should I accept? I really have doubts about this business of making novels compete against each other, especially when the novels in question are so different, and when the brilliant thing about the art that we make with words is the variety. Today's novel won the Booker in 1984, and while I was researching this review, I found out about the controversy surrounding that win, and it saddened me. It seems to me that all this fighting about which book should have won completely detracted from what the books were, what they had to offer. And as I was writing this opening, though, I was encouraged because it occurred to me that the internet and BookTube in particular is an antidote to all of the downsides of literary competitiveness. And that's not only because we expand the number of judges, don't we, but because you, the viewers, you get to hear all the opinions and not just some forced consensus. Today, we are reviewing Hôtel du Lac by Anita Brookner, published in 1984 by Jonathan Cape. Can I pitch this novel? I want to read first from a 1994 edition of the Woman's Review of Books, talking about the kind of characters Anita Brookner likes to create. Brookner's protagonists, it's difficult to think of them unproblematically as heroines, for there's a faint whiff of authorial contempt that clings to them. The plainly named, dutiful Ruth, Frances, Rachel, Edith, Anna, Harriet, Fay, Jane. They have their foils in extravagantly feminine and dangerous women with frivolous names. Heather, Iris, Alex, Julia, Dolly. These are women who recognize how power is distributed in their world and who settle for its imperfect terms. I think that may be the first time I've ever heard my own name described as frivolous, but that's my problem, and it's not going to detract from this review. The protagonist of Hôtel du Lac is one of those plain, dutiful women, a 30-something named Edith Hope. She's a writer of the kind of old-fashioned romantic novels where the good girl gets the most eligible bachelor in spite fierce competition from, shall we say, women with more visible assets and fewer scruples. All of Edith's female friends assume that the reason she writes these books is to provide herself with the best substitute she can find for a husband and a family. And so they try to find Edith a husband, and this book is the story of how that went. Now, what I've told you already sounds like the plot for a genre romance, but before you get excited or completely unexcited, depending on your natural attraction to romantic novels, just bear in mind the quote that I've already read. Brookner, she will consider male-female attachments in her novels, but she does not produce anything like the works of her fictional protagonist, Edith Hope. When you read Hôtel du Lac, it seems wise to remember that before Brookner was a novelist, she was an art historian. I suggest that Hôtel du Lac is a series of studies in human attachment, achieved using prose instead of paint. Right, book details. How long is it? How did I get it? How much did I pay? As you see here from the cover graphic, I bought the Kindle Penguin edition that came out in 1993, and that comes in at 185 pages. Amazon stats say the paperback copy is 192 pages, but either way, it's a short read if you're looking for that. I may well have started this book on the first anniversary of its purchase. That was the 7th of July, 2023. I bought it because I knew Anita Brookner. I knew she had a literary reputation, but I had not got to any of her books. The Kindle copy on Amazon UK right now is selling for 99 pence, and there are many inexpensive second-hand hardback and paperback copies available online. Amazon.com is selling their second-hand copies starting at US $3.95. Now let's talk a little bit about the author. Anita Brookner was born in 1928 in London. Her parents were Jewish emigres who came from Poland, and when they did, they anglicized the spelling of their surname, as you can see here, from Bruckner to Brook. N-E-R. Same way, really, that the British royal family changed their name from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to Windsor in reaction to the anti-German sentiment during World War I. Brookner herself once described her relationship with her parents. She said they were transplanted and fragile people, an unhappy brood, and I felt that I had to protect them. Indeed, that is what they expected. As a result, I became an adult too soon and paradoxically never grew up. Her growing up experience would, however, feature in her novels, in her characters' lives. Anita attended James Allen's Girls' School. That's the second oldest independent school for girls, founded in 1741. She went on to earn a BA in history from King's College London and then a doctorate in art history from the Courtauld Institute. She also received a scholarship to study at the Études du Louvre in Paris. With these credentials, she became the first woman to hold the Slade Professorship of Fine Art at Cambridge in 1967. And then she taught art there and at other universities, Reading University and also at the Courtauld Institute, until she retired in 1988. She produced a number of recognized works about art history in the 70s, but she didn't venture into writing fiction until she was in her 50s. Her first novel, A Start in Life, was published in 1981, and from then she produced a new novel every year throughout the 80s and the 90s. Hôtel du Lac was published in 1984, and it won the Booker Prize that same year. Anita Brookner was awarded a CBE, that is Commander Order of the British Empire, in 1990. She died in 2016, aged 87. The setting for this novel is not an invented one. The protagonist, Edith Hope, she's encouraged to leave England for a little while, and her agent suggests the Hôtel du Lac, which is currently known as Le Grand Hôtel du Lac. It's a 5-star establishment. It's located in Vevey, Switzerland, on the shores of Lac Léman. The hotel was completely refurbished in 2016, so you have to go look online at grainy black and white photographs from 1915 to get a sense of the original atmosphere. The proprietor in the novel, he's very particular about his guests. The accepted ones have to come with the right personal recommendations. The place is significant, and also the time. Edith arrives in late September, a few weeks before the hotel will close for the season, when the weather is turning, and the few guests who are still there after all the summer visitors have gone, well, they look curious. They beg a question. Why are you here? And the staff seem to know these guests very well. They treat them more like residents than guests. They're also all female. I had the sense that I was observing life inside a luxurious care home, an almost empty, luxurious care home. And the immensity of the space inside the hotel and outside of it, it really does make the guests seem insignificant. And that includes Edith. Brookner makes this insignificance clear right away. The first chapter, you get 250 words just describing the lake, the mountains, the garden, the castle, the market, before it introduces, almost as an afterthought, the main character. In terms of putting a date on the events in Hôtel du Lac, there was a mention of a color television in one of the more expensive suites, and the implied luxury of this item suggests to me that the book is set in the late 1960s, maybe early 1970s. And that time period is also associated, of course, with second wave feminism. So the female characters in this book all came of age several decades before that. Narrative viewpoint is third person, with the ability to be omniscient, but Brookner's narrator has little inclination to exercise that power. We stay 99.9% with Edith Hope. Those occasions when the viewpoint does slip away to reveal another character's thoughts, you do notice them. You have been shut inside Edith's mind in the way that she has been shutting herself often inside her hotel room. They feel like sudden, shocking glimpses of the outside world that remind you that there is an outside world. The longest passage like this happens at the end of the book, and it's a signal that Edith's enforced isolation is over, but something else is beginning for the other characters. This is from page 172, as Edith comes down from her room to the ground floor salon for the last time. It also gives you an idea of Brookner's writing style. Here, too, the absence of activity seemed to signify a general decision to leave. The pianist had worked out his engagement and would now return to his winter occupation of giving private lessons to unmusical schoolgirls. Monsieur Hubert, slightly disappointed as always at having somehow failed to achieve that ideal and brilliant social mix which is the hotelier's most persistent wish, viewed the empty salon with regret. He was feeling those rheumatic twinges that heralded both the winter and his exile, for he was to proceed, once the Hôtel du Lac shut down, to the Spanish villa of his daughter and son-in-law, where he languished in the eventless sunshine, with nothing to supervise. He was no good at being a guest. Does this novel fit a genre category? It's a character-driven novel. However, the characters in question, for the most part, are not the people in the driving seats of their own lives. These passenger characters are all women. Anita Brookner uses her protagonist's voice, a writer's voice, to articulate an important theme in the book. And I'm quoting now from page 40 of the Kindle version. The result of all this was to reopen in Edith's mind the question of what behavior most becomes a woman, the question around which she had written most of her novels, the question she had attempted to argue with Harold Webb, the question she had failed to answer, and which she now saw to be of the most vital importance. I felt the novel was a very specific examination of the way in which European middle-class women could become trapped by gender expectations circa the mid-20th century. Now, I'm using all those qualifying adjectives as a way of stressing that this novel needs to be seen as a product of its time. What could be a useful discussion question for any book group that was looking at Hôtel du Lac would be which characters and their situations would still be realistic or instructive portraits of women today. What, if anything, stands out as an aspect of this novel? Brookner commented in one interview that she had received several proposals of marriage, but she'd rejected them all. In her opinion, men were, and I'm quoting now, people with their own agenda, who think you might be fitted in if they lop off certain parts. You can see them coming a mile off. She does not add that women, as much as men, can come to marriage with an agenda. Hôtel du Lac only examines one side to that story, and again, that has to be kept in mind. Men exist in this novel as memories or anecdotes told by the women. The one notable exception is Philip Neville, and he seems to fit the type that Brookner had in mind. He's a man with an agenda. He's a man who seems to carry in his mind a full product specification for his ideal wife. Is there problematic content in this book? The problematic content in this book is really more problematic for the characters in their time than it will likely be for contemporary readers. In fact, for contemporary readers, the tough thing may be to understand the choices Edith and the other female characters have made because they're dated choices. They date from a time when it was rare and frowned upon for a woman to earn her own living, to make any choices of her own. I would only issue a mild warning to anyone who might have difficulty being reminded of miscarriage or of eating disorders. Finally, any recommendations for related or follow-up reading? The hot favorite for the 1984 Booker Prize was not Anita Brookner. The lowest odds were for J.G. Ballard's epic that was set in wartime Shanghai, Empire of the Sun. The fact that Brookner was chosen instead is really interesting. You might think, maybe the judging panel was mostly female, but in fact, in 1984, the male-female split in the 5-person judging panel was 4 men to 1 woman. And that's really interesting because 2 years later, this is a bit of trivia, 2 years later, in 1986, the split was 1 man to 4 women, and the winner was The Old Devils by Kingsley Amis. These facts come from the Booker Prize podcast, and I've included a link to the episode on 1984 in my description box. I've watched the 1984 ceremony footage, and you can see from the clips I've put below just how surprised Anita Brookner was when her name was announced as winner. She really didn't know what to do next. There's actually a ripple of laughter in the room when she finally composes herself and gets up and walks over to accept the award, and she makes a very, very short acceptance speech. So for today's recommended reading, I'm going to suggest J.G. Ballard, Empire of the Sun, because it's a very different novel, and that's what I love about reading, right? It amazes me how many ways there are to make art using words. And I also had a peek on BorrowBox, which is my library's app. I can borrow the ebook version of Empire of the Sun. I'm very tempted to do that. And that's another fiction review done. I had a brilliant day this last Saturday, can I just say, and I wish we could do this more often. Myself and the person who watches television, we took a short drive to a nearby park. We took a picnic, folding chairs and some books, and we just read from about 11 in the morning until 5 o'clock that evening. I started and I finished a slim volume of short stories by Anita, and so that's going to be the next fiction review. But until then, thanks everyone for checking out this video. I hope you have good luck meeting your July reading goals. Take care. Bye-bye.